Your typical trailer campaign has lots of different types of trailers. There's your debut trailer, there's your first gameplay trailer, character reveals, cinematics, developer diaries, and so forth. With so much variation, it can be difficult to maintain a consistent visual style the entire time, but you don't want your message to get muddy. I recently stopped by Carbine Studios to ask the developer how they apply today's lesson to their MMO, Wildstar. Stick to your style. The cinematics department at Carbine Studios produces 3 types of videos to promote Wildstar. Trailers mark big events like the game's announcement and launch. Dev Speaks go in-depth on one of Wildstar's more complex components like raids or housing.
You know, questing, exploring, looting, trolling, raging.
And Flicks let the characters on the planet Nexus speak for themselves. When it came time to create a video that would tell the central story of Wildstar, the whole team got involved, and all of these styles were brought into play.
We've done a lot of videos over the past couple of years. We've done like 8 flicks and then 9 flicks and then a bunch of trailers and a whole bunch of in-game stuff. So it's just in a small team. So it's, I think, an incredible achievement with the level of quality that we got in this short period of time.
Early on when we were just starting out making trailers, it was very much just shooting in the game. We would use fraps. We wouldn't have animations even synced with each other between objects.
Because, you know, when we first started, it was just kind of like, how are we going to make this work? There was no like real system in place for how we're going to capture this stuff. I remember there's a Macari walking down the hallway, and he turns and he like shoots at this guy off screen, and it like throws this paper airplane, and every single time like the flash would end up just, sometimes it's there, because it's one frame, you never know which frames Fraps is going to catch. So we were definitely like trying to find something more consistent.
We sort of worked on it one little piece at a time with programmers, with what our engine could do. So one of the things we got was the ability to render one frame at a time. And so that was a huge advancement for us because it let us do great compositing tricks. It let us make sure that each frame was the exact frame that the animator sculpted. And we could do things like add some depth of field, add motion blur, and make the shot really come to life.
Initially, we had characters in the game that had limited facial rigging or made it more automated system. We took it, broke it apart, made it more manual, so we could have just manual control over all the facial poses and everything. And that really helped make the characters come alive. And that's all stuff we can do without increasing any render time or anything. It just works in the game. And because it works in the game, we were able to retrofit it into the in-game cinematics. In the later in-game cinematics, we get the same level of expressiveness that we can get in the flicks.
We had started to gain some momentum with the first couple of dev speaks that were created in-house, but we started to realize that there was a definite interest and desire to see more of them. We started to just need to generate more content, you know, whether it's through our flicks or through the dev speaks. There was this kind of internal movement to really want to build up a sense of presence as far as what we were doing and the type of game that we were making, because we had the announcement trailer, which Blur, you know, was kind enough to create for us. But, you know, it's great being able to have an external company do those kind of big flashy things, but when you're a part of the company making the game, there's a certain amount of pride that comes into being able to create that material if you have the bandwidth to do so.
And each cinematic, you know, gets more and more involved. You start adding more and more cameras. You start coming up with, you know, new ways to do things to, you know, make the quality better.
When we did the Dominion, we finally had some time to storyboard and actually kind of animate and go back and forth and play with shots. And the Exile video was the real step forward. So that is when we got the frame rendering. That's when we were able to do, you know, actual post-production pipeline and make sure that everything was kind of animated the way that it was supposed to be.
This series is about taking a closer look at Wildstar's gameplay. This is the disclaimer. Let's get to it. We thought now was a good time to go over some of the finer details of Wildstar's gameplay mechanics. I think it's best we start at the foundation.
We were trying to get as much time from other departments as we could, but it wasn't like a big priority until we started putting out these cinematics and these marketing things for people like, oh wow, these cinematics, they're great. Like, and then more teams, just they wanted to help. They wanted to see their content put into like a cool cinematic. They wanted to see a flick based on their stuff. They wanted to see, so we started getting all this like technical support and all this like just great.
I think it's a great way to really kind of get people who are working on lots of different pieces to kind of look at something specific and go like, this is the game that we're making. Developers or gamers, they have something that you know, the kind of game experience that they want. And so I think it is helpful on both sides, not just for you know, helping to convince people to play the game, but also really like to get the studio to understand the game.
You do housing, and you knew that the people on that team just loved their housing, and they loved everything they were doing with housing. And for us to be able to take that and make something people could look at and get excited about, that was definitely a really cool part of the team, because then you take it to them and you'll be like, this is what we came up with, and they're like, wow, this is exactly, you know, it's kind of like the culmination of all of the things that they've been working on, and they can see it.
That was one of my favorite parts of the process, is just going around and being like, what are you guys doing on econ? You know, what are you guys doing with combat? What are you doing with war plots? And they would just get into it, right? And you would be able to see right away, wow, that is a feature that needs to be kind of looked at. I think a lot of times when trailer houses are making trailers, they're essentially working with the game as is, or they're working with footage that has actually been captured in the studio. So being able to actually have access to the dev tools and to the little nitty-gritty of the world is a pretty unique thing.
We don't set everything up in like a 3D program and then render it all out of there. We actually take all the assets and we build a special part of the game, special environment, special characters. We set everything up, and then we just kind of play it like it would play in the game.
If a model doesn't quite work for us, we can actually get into the files, make some changes, combine it with other models. We can actually get directly into the world and start playing with the terrain.
As a team, like we're very collaborative, right? If one thing doesn't work, and we ask to other and like people, or if I built it in certain way, and then if Kishore and Jared come and ask me like, could you make changes on this? We're pretty flexible on that.
Because we use a lot of the actual game assets. Sometimes we spawn in the actual visual effects that you'll see there. You know, we will use the exact same ones that the content designer team uses all the time.
Sometimes we'll go in and we'll just erase an entire town, and we'll just paint grass over like the little patches where the houses were, because we just need that simple background right there. We'll go into a zone and we'll just change the whole sky to being a completely different environment. This might look like a peaceful village, and we're just going to make it a blizzard.
But we had a fantastic system that Chris Hanel made called Caboose, which really let us fly around, change camera speeds, change player speeds, and I used that extensively to get all the DevSpeak shots for all our series.
We can make players invincible. We can have, you know, my character usually is flying around and it's zoomed in so you don't see the character, and it's just like pullback shot, seeing the whole raid. Something you wouldn't be able to do in the client as, you know, a player shooting machinima or something. We can disguise units as just random things. I've disguised a character as a bomb in order to drop the bomb out of the sky. We're not programming these cameras to fly around. It's all done by hand with the keyboard and kind of like shuffling mouse.
So folks have been asking for it, and we've listened. Cue the music.
Storyboards are extremely necessary for the cinematic trailers that we do. So all the animated sort of film style trailers really rely heavily on everything making sense in the storyboard phase. It takes a lot of time to custom animate all the characters and make every little lip curl and head movement. So we want to make sure that the storytelling is really nailed down with storyboards.
The experience will be excruciatingly painful!
It is very much in terms of hitting this tone of voice, rather than just like, you know, 6 shot after 6 shot after 6 shot. It's really about this personality.
I find that because Wildstar has been personality focused from the get-go, it's actually easier to storyboard because I don't have to try and extrapolate that from the characters or invent it on the fly. A lot of the characters, you know, have distinctive shapes, and their shapes often lend to the personality that's already been written for them. So I'll do a little bit of preparation time and maybe look through our assets. If there's a character I haven't drawn much before, I'll do a few loose sketches and kind of figure out how I'm going to portray them in the boards.
And then for the character development, A lot of the responsibility for character development would be on the animators at the end, but we would already have a steady guideline for what the character is going to be from the script and from the boards. We know, say for instance, you know how Sarge is and what he does, and he's he's all gruff and tough and all that, but at the end, he's also funny.
Oh boy.
The story trailer was a very interesting process. Unlike all of our flicks, it was kind of a last-minute idea that was come up with within the company, and we just kind of attacked it all together.
But the story trailer also had a lot of in-game cinematics, because what we were trying to show with the story trailer was the events in-game, the story in-game, and so for that, a lot of the in-game cinematics that we were already working on were like, those are big kind of epic moments that we can use.
Our pre-production process is very segmented, right? The writers write it, the storyboard artist storyboards it, animators animate it, and so forth. This was kind of like all hands on deck. It was everybody got in there and just came up with shots as they were going. We were digging into the game's VO banks and trying to find little snippets that we could use to tell this overarching story.
Even with some of our early trailers, we were almost kind of making something that was too subtly almost parroting the kind of trailer tone, right? And so that is a lot of what the kind of early videos are like. But then there is absolutely this weight to the world that we're trying to, condense. And the story in our game, it's very grand. It's extremely grand. Walking through that process from the beginning, it was a lot about trying to really kind of sum up where you don't have a couple of seconds of dialogue to really introduce a character. It's just punch after punch after punch.
We used VO from other races even and put them on these characters to try to create the personality that we thought was best for the shot. Right, so when Deadeye turns around and he goes,
Ever get a feeling something's seriously wrong?
He's actually using the Granox voice, but it was so gruff and just rough in that moment, it felt right for his kind of cowboy personality.
And I also got to work on the Eldon Annihilator shot, which is the big giant robot. He's slowly walking through the town. We didn't have a shot like that in our game because it's kind of tied into the backstory of the game, and we don't have a lot of flashback cinematics. We knew we needed a big, wide open spot for this guy to walk through. Looking at little pieces that already exist in the game, we knew that those little robots that follow him around, like they already existed. So rather than animating each individual robot, I pulled in a gameplay animation that had already been created by another animator on the gameplay team. And I was able to reuse that animation for this trailer and apply it to each individual robot so that I could save time there. A shot like that might be like a week or two. It's very short. It might be like a second or so, which is still quite a bit of time for most gameplay animations.
Soon all will become clear. Thank you for participating in this experiment. I have learned a great deal, and I am certain that we will meet again very soon.
Yeah, definitely the biggest Wildstar tenet is personality. So that is the one thing about our game that we really wanted to convey, was we wanted to create characters that had these recognizable, distinctive personalities and exaggerate them a little bit for comedic effect. Even with our gameplay videos, we tend to talk about things in this very high personality, exaggerated kind of a way.
People, they see the trailers that we do and the flicks, and they want to see more of that in the game. Moving forward, Seth is giving us more time for polish and creating more intricate animations with more personality, and also with the idea that we can use them for a trailer. So then we can kind of kill two birds with one stone, not just create work just for the game or just for marketing, but try to create animations and cinematics that would work for both.
But this one is also, I think, ages well, because It holds its style longer. It doesn't matter if CG technology goes more realistic. This is stylized, and this is a simpler graphic style.
We were always kind of pushing what the game could do with cinematics. So anytime we would do optimization, we have to kind of refigure out the cinematics and make them work up to what we. So now that we're kind of hitting that point where the game's a lot better optimized, we're starting to see what we can do now versus what we can do then. Yeah.
And so it's been a very short period of time that we've just added more people and have really, stepped up our game simply to really try to create compelling content that hopefully competes at the same level as, some of those outsourcing agencies that a lot of the bigger studios use.
Obviously, it's easy to stick to a consistent visual theme if you're producing all of your trailers in-house. So if you're shopping them out to other production companies, just make sure you translate your vision clearly or remain diligent when you police their work. Special thank you to Carbine Studios for having me out and producing such awesome gameplay for me to work with. Other trailers that stick to their style include Disney Infinity, Ratchet & Clank, Super Smash Bros., and World of Warcraft. If you know any other trailer campaigns that stick to their style, let me know on Twitter at GameTrailersVO. See you next time.